I'm going to show you the #1 way that pro carpenters make faster, more accurate cuts. And keep in mind that in showing this, I'm not advocating for cutting quickly. When you're making a cut with any power saw, you should always focus on safety first and cutting at a steady pace. But big projects, especially framing and outdoor projects, will require a lot of cuts. And pros use a simple method to make accurate cuts quickly. So that's what I'm talking about today on The Honest Carpenter Show. Okay, the best way to cut quickly and accurately is to start your cut accurately, and that can be tricky. You may have to kind of crane your head over a saw to judge if the blade is on target before you start cutting. So, to make this easier, pros will frequently use a method called creeping the cut. To do this, you really have to visualize the board or piece as having two sides. The side you want to keep and the waste side. For instance, let's say I want a piece from this board that is exactly 24 inches long. I pull that measurement from a clean end and mark it on the edge. I can even scribe my whole plot line with a speed square if I like. Now, I want to keep the full 24 inches. So I don't want my blade scarring that side at all. But this waste side is a bit more free game. It may not be the end of the world if I nick it just a little bit. So to get a quick lineup, I'll just situate the saw a bit more to that side. Then I'll fire it up and just kiss the edge of the board with the blade. I watch where the notch from my blade forms. It's off a tiny bit to the waste side, so I creep it towards the line. I may even shimmy the saw back and forth ever so slightly to let me scoot it fractions of an inch. When the notch is splitting the mark line, I then begin driving my cut. Keep in mind, I can do this with the speed square as a guide as well. I just scoot the square and the saw simultaneously. This gives me an even better lineup with the circular saw. And I may even do a version of this with the table saw. If I've marked a board right where I need my cut, I may just bring the fence over until I'm roughly lined up. I keep the blade a little bit wide though, and make a test notch on the waste side. This shows me how much I have to dial over. Then, when my notch is right on the mark, I lock the fence and drive the cut through. And naturally, the same thing applies to the jigsaw. Start cutting to the waste side and work towards the line. And sometimes even the miter saw. Except in this case, I might just bring the still blade down onto the piece and use the slightest bit of pressure to make a tooth mark on the board. If I see that mark right where I want it, I lift the blade slightly, pull the trigger, and make my cut there. But the important thing here always is being sure to start just a little bit on the waste side and then moving towards the line. Most pros do this without thinking, and it lets us get our cuts lined up more quickly and with less hassle. The only time you may want to avoid this is if you don't want to damage your board at all, even on the waste side. It may be a case where you don't want those tiny little notches on the cutoff piece because you're using that whole thing later. Or possibly you're using this cut as a start for the next cut. In that case, just focus very carefully on how you're starting your cut. But I think you'll be amazed at how light of a notch you can put on an edge and see it form. I test start basically all of my cuts like this and rarely leave much visible evidence. Usually you can sand it right out or you just don't notice it at all. That's the creep method. What do you think? Do you already use this method? Let me hear about it down below. I'll link several saws and blades in case you're looking for new tools right now. And be sure to sign up for our newsletter at thehonestcarpenter.com for free videos and guides. As always, thanks for watching, and I hope you'll consider subscribing. I'm Ethan James with thehonestcarpenter.com. I'll see you next time.